So fellow Ghanaians, thank you very much for joining us on Upfront on the JoyNews channel. It's a Wednesday and we're glad that you've made time to spend your evening with us. And this evening we're having a very important conversation. One has got many of us talking because, well, we anticipated that the rains would be in May, June, July. Unfortunately, it's been in August and September. And as usual, we have the normal conversation, the annual ritual. How do we deal with challenges when it comes to flooding in our country? And for our brothers and sisters in northern Ghana, it becomes even more serious because while waiting for the spillage of the Bagre Dam, the areas are flooding. The question is there anything new under the sun that we do not know when it comes to flood mitigation measures? Or is just a case of not doing enough when enough is expected of us? My name is Winston Amoa, and today we're joined by somebody, well, I'm sure that many of you who may not know, but for those who are close to him, you know him as one person who knows a lot when it comes to dealing with crisis prevention and recovery. In fact, he's worked with the UN and has been in charge of the Bureau of Crisis Prevention and Recovery within the African region. He's advised them and he knows a lot. But for all of us also, remember him as a former Chief of Staff and a former Minister for Interior. Prosper Bani, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me, and I'm happy to be part of your program this evening.
Yes, I mean, we're happy that you've welcomed us to your home to have this conversation, with you. But for many Ghanaians who haven't heard from you in a very long time, the question they would want to find answers to is how's been life? Particularly since you left the public eye.
Well, it's been very interesting because it's a new area that you enter into post retirement from your normal working life. The activities of professional work has been very intense for the several years that I've been away, and the role of the Chief of Staff to the Minister for Interior overseeing the 2016 elections without any violence or minimum violence, but no deaths. So you want to take a backstage, reflect over issues of development, reflect over your own experiences, and think about what you can do differently to help society. And that's what I've been engaged in for the last couple of years. Of course, I'm associated with the National Democratic Congress. Therefore, I play my role as much as I can to support the party, to continue organizing and to support the leadership to come back.
What specific role are you playing in your party's reorganization? I'm interested.
Well, we play different roles at different times. And for people like us who are not frontal politicians, sometimes it's better to keep your role behind the scenes than up front. However, you realize
this is upfront anyway, so you could actually bring it out.
I'll give you an upfront contribution to my party. Since the coronavirus, the party put together a technical team, and I've been chairing the technical team since then. We've done so much in terms of providing alternative approaches to the response to government, and we've written documents, we've had engagement with them, and we're watching how things are unfolding. In our own small way as a political party, we've been educating our membership. We've been providing guidance to all our activities in terms of maintaining the protocols, and we've continued to review the global trends, the regional trends, and how effective we can contribute in minimizing the impact of the pandemic in this country.
And what will be your assessment of how, as a country, we've fared when it comes to managing the pandemic?
I think that we've been very delayed by the presence of the vaccine. We've so much behind time in terms of the potential effect of our people should the virus continue to spread. Now I hear a couple of vaccines coming into town. We have a huge problem with the procurement of the previous vaccines, and we hope that all these supply chain mechanisms will be addressed in a way that the people of this country benefit from the vaccine program.
Great. Now, you started by talking about, when you're in public life and post-public life, how things are going. I'll come to your party's reorganization briefly before we get to our main issue, which has to do with flooding. But, for many Ghanaians, when you talk about being a chief of staff, and I've had people ask the question, what's really the role of the chief of staff? We saw, the Kufuor era, where the chief of staff also became a minister in charge of presidential affairs. That was changed under Professor Mills and John Mahama. As chief of staff under John Mahama, what was your routine like?
It's very difficult to define a routine for the chief of staff.
Okay.
So, primarily, as the Act provides, you are the head of administration of the office of the president.
Okay.
It means a lot. So, some of the details comes as it comes, as it confronts them. But you are the head of them. So as long as the president's operations are running smoothly, everything that goes behind is the chief of staff's role.
Hold on a minute.
In terms of coordination. Yes.
So head of administration at the presidency. And you say some of these
head
things...
of the staff and administration.
Staff of administration.
Yeah.
What I want to know is, so you see some of these things come as and when you move on. But if I'm sitting back and I want to understand how the presidency works, for instance, so as chief of staff, you're head of the staff and administration. Do I get the impression that everything the presidency is involved in is something that you are in charge of?
You know about it.
You will know about it?
Yeah, to a large extent.
Everything done even at the ministries, you will know about it?
Because the ministry engagements come through cabinet, and you are part of cabinet.
Okay.
There are follow-ups instructions by the president as to what you should do at this ministry or the other. But however, everything that involves the operations, daily activities of the president and the presidency, the chief of staff is aware.
So, as chief of staff, finally, how was it for you when you became chief of staff?
It was an exciting moment.
Were you expecting it in the first place?
No, not really. I knew that President Mahama has done so well, he was going to become president. I knew from my background that, and a member of the NDC, that I'll have a role to play in supporting the NDC to do a good job. Okay. Yeah, that is what I would say.
You knew you had a role. You were going to have a role in government.
Not really, but a role. I could have been at any level, but I was excited.
You were with the UN at the time.
Yeah, at the time of the election, I had left. Okay. Because it was obvious at that time that President Mills had passed on. There was a lot of things around President Mahama. We've known each other for a long time. When he was vice president, when he was minister for communication, we're engaging at various levels. So, and I've been associated with this party for a very long time. Okay. Since the revolution times, I was president. And so I knew all the actors, I knew where the spirit and dictates of the party was going to do for this country. So I'm associated with the NDC as much as any other person. Expecting to be chief of staff, the president didn't tell anybody that I was going to be leader. It was the prerogative of the president. So
when he called you and said you're going to be chief of staff, how was that feeling?
I said yes, sir.
You said yes, sir?
Yeah, I'll do it.
You didn't think twice?
If the president gives you an assignment, the president might have assessed your capabilities to be able to determine that you'll be able to do it effectively. And I don't doubt the judgment of President Mahama. So when he called me at that point to do that assignment, I accepted it and began to build a team around me to do the work that I was expected to do very shortly. Yeah.
So let's get to flooding in this country. And I know you've been doing lots of work on it. You've been, even within the UN, you've been involved in crisis prevention and recovery. And many Ghanaians may not know this, but for those of us who've read about you and are aware of that, it's important we have this conversation. Now, we would read information about how much we've spent in desilting of drainages and how much we've spent in constructing new drains and how much of a problem, building in waterways are to, us. But it just doesn't look like all these things have solved the annual flooding. It's become like a ritual. We know around May to July, August, we'll be talking about flooding. Well, this time around, we're talking about it even in September. Why is it so difficult for us to deal with flooding in this country?
Thank you for the question, but let me just roll back a little bit, because flooding is just one potential disaster we can have. There's occasions where we can have droughts, which could also have a devastating effect on our people. We could have the intermittent earthquakes that occur. We may have any other unexpected disasters. And those are the things we all have to put into context if we want to respond or prepare for future disasters. And coming to my previous work, you realize that the Bureau for Crisis Prevention is one bureau of United Nations Development Program. So behind the crisis response is a development drive.
Okay.
So when we come to flood, for example, it is a natural phenomenon. We can't stop the rains from falling. And therefore, my advocacy for a long time has been to learn how to live with the floods and prepare and prevent the impact on livelihoods, on the economy, on housing, on farming, and on roads, to ensure that when the rains are coming, we are comfortable.
How do we ensure that when the rains come, we're comfortable?
Yeah, that's where the advocacy on prevention comes in. And that's where the problem with development also comes in.
What's the problem with development?
I expect, for example, and I've been advocating this for a while, that we, as part of the development planning, we must have prevention of disasters embedded in that.
How do we do that?
Well, it's up to the policymakers and the planners.
Yeah, but you've worked in that field before, and so you can.
For
those of us who do not know, for instance, how do we have crisis prevention embedded in our development planning?
It's been for several years, let's say 30 years before, it was not an issue. Crisis prevention and recovery just emerged in the last 30 to 40 years as a way of addressing development. One of my deja vu is about Afghanistan, for example.
Okay.
Or just recalling the current experience of Afghanistan. I recall that in that should be 2002, I think, in February, soon after the Americans invaded Afghanistan. That was 3 to 4 months after the invasion. I was one of the team that was sent by UNDP to begin the recovery program.
Okay.
That, when the Taliban were ousted, that was the time the crisis prevention and recovery thinking emerged. And it was led by UNDP in collaboration with other development partners. So, coming to flooding in Ghana, there has been a lot of efforts, but most of the resources have gone into humanitarian relief and reaction to the flooding. I am saying that is not enough. We need to begin from the budget for our development plan. How much have we put aside for preventing the impact of floods should they come? I had observed last year the wonderful work that EcoBank and Joy FM and other private organizations did in mobilizing resources and capacity to respond to last year's floods.
Yeah.
I was of the view that by January, February of this year, the conversation that occurred last year will be different from January, February. These same drivers will begin to talk about how do we prevent the impact of floods in 2021. Everything went dead as if the floods were not going to come. Now the floods have started building up. They destroy our farms, they destroy our roads, they're destroying our properties, lives are being lost, and we are going to react. And let me give you this typical jingoistic political press presence. Immediately after the floods, all the actors begin to take media space. Oh, the roads will be fixed tomorrow, the bridge will be fixed tomorrow. It's too late. Why didn't you get the bridge fixed before the rains started?
Okay.
It's too late. Why do you tell people when the rain have started to begin to look for places to relocate to? It is too late. Why do you ask people, oh, you should start what do you call it, harvesting your crops because the rains are coming? It is too late.
But these people also know these things, for instance. I mean, if you're a farmer, you know that the rains are going to be coming at this time. It's a ritual. It affects you all the time. Why do you need someone to remind you of what you have to do?
That is their livelihoods. Please don't take that space from them. Things have become worse. These people have been farming and living in those areas before the Bagri Dam was built. They have used their natural defensive mechanism to survive. Development has destroyed the natural environment that protects the land from being degraded through floods. These same development interventions that have affected their traditional practices are the ones affecting them today. So they sometimes don't understand when you should not build a house where you have built a house.
Okay.
When you have overburdened the drains with developed debris from some development project, it's affecting the people downstream.
Okay.
So we now need development actors to intervene to minimize the impact of the.
Let's look at some of the things that, for instance, the government talked about. And I remember in 2020, in a statement issued on the 3rd of September, there was a talk of, the plans that have been in place and that will be continued. So one of them, was the long-term plan was to have the Pualugu Dam constructed, multi-purpose dam constructed. Then they also talked about the dredging of the confluences of the major white water tributaries, Nabogo, Kupong, and Nasia, and I think Sicily also, so 4 of them. Now, these were plans that were put in place. And they also talked about giving farmers, fast maturing seedlings so they could harvest their produce before we get to, before there's a spillage or before the floods come. Are these measures that I would say, if we implemented, we're going to help?
I would say the plans for it to go through a process of approval are always very beautiful, are always well intended. They have well intentions behind the plans. It is the political will to put money behind the plans for effectiveness. The Pualugu Dam, yes, the president himself talked about it. VRA is leading it. There are so many actors. But if you really go down the tracks, they don't have the resources to implement it as fast as we want it to happen. Go down there and check on whether the fast-growing seeds have been made available. But we should also be cautious. If you introduce new development interventions without any proper advocacy to the local folks, they will not use your seeds. They are not aware. They will just, you have to use this instead of this. And for the last 6-8 months, they've been preparing their own local seeds. You can give it to them free, don't use it. If there's no real background or investigation on how to transition from a traditional way of farming to a modern way of farming because of the development interventions that have destroyed their traditional way of farming.
Okay.
Yes, so we need to begin to get our governments and our policymakers and decision makers to back their plans with budgets.
Talking about backing plans with budget, I mean, we have a National Disaster Management Organization whose motto is prevention. and they have a budget, and you have a Ministry of Works and Housing that is expected to construct drains that would facilitate some of these things, and they have budgets also. The silting of drains and construction of drains has become a major political conversation because over the last 2 years or so, Samuel Atachi had talked about how the NPP government had spent over 200 million in the construction of drains, which he felt was a major achievement in the fight against flooding or disasters associated with rains. But the other question is, do we really have funds available for some of these things? For instance, we're talking about the Palugu multipurpose dam. $1 billion. Can the Ghanaian budget cater for a 6 billion Ghana cedis infrastructural development?
Without external support.
Exactly, because a government says it's supposed to be a GOG funded project.
Well, that's a huge question mark, and that's why it's been delayed. If you look at the bigger picture, the finance minister has always complained about domestic mobilization of resources, which we are in deficit of. We've not been meeting our targets. How can you build a dam of 6 billion cedis without mobilizing effectively domestic funds? It's impossible. And you tell me that it's government of Ghana funded. It's very difficult. That's I will go back again to the planners. You mentioned NADMO.
Yes.
NADMO was emerged when this whole rationalization of national disaster responses emerged. It was after a UN disaster conference that NADMO and others came up in the 1990s. Today, NADMO is not what it's expected to be.
Why? What is it expected to be? What has it become?
Because it has become a wait and see organization. Every day I can imagine them waiting, praying that the rain should not fall or there should not be an error. Because right now, if you look at the budget of NADMO, it may be near to zero. Because even for the relief items, they are in debt. Creditors have ceased to give credit to NADMO in some cases. If that is the situation now, or the scenario now, then we are in great trouble. However, let me also give credit to some of the international NGOs that are around. The Red Crosses, the Doctors Without Borders, UNDP, WFP, UNHCR, and others. They all come together once there's a disaster. I'm sure they have some coordinated meeting going on that is providing resources. But I bet you, those are just supporting. They need to fit into a national plan. And if the nation doesn't have a plan, all these partners will be doing things tangentially, which may not congregate into any objective.
So let's look at that plan that you're talking about. So right now you've talked about how we should, how we should factor in crisis prevention into development plans, and we should also have, crisis response in our development plan. Because while you're planning for prevention, it may eventually happen, and you would need how to.
We need to live with the floods, so
exactly.
The response part
is
response
part is very important. So let's look at the preventive parts now. What do we do right now?
One, do the roads, build the bridges, desilt the drains, provide proper legal mechanisms to punish people who, for example, build on waterways. For a second we've been focusing as if the floods always occur in the north. In the Greater Accra, when the rains fall and you visit some of the affected areas, you will realize that there has been a permit that has been provided for somebody to build on a waterway. There has been a permit provided by a filling station owner to build a filling station on a waterway. Gutters or drainage which have to be completed effectively have been truncated because the budget has not been sufficient. places where we have or they have identified as critical areas to address, reconstruct the drainage system and provide for effective flow of water doesn't happen. If you go to the slum areas, all this plastic and rubbish are being put into the drainage system without anybody controlling it. If we do not have legislation against these things through a system of maintaining our waterways or water plains, to the extent that we do not have these floods becoming and if having effects on us, then we're going to be living with the floods in a very dangerous way.
Talking about legislation, I mean, we know you're not supposed to build in waterways.
We don't.
We know that you're supposed to go for a building plan before you build, and the building plan must check and see whether this is a waterway, and so you don't build there. So do we need new legislations? How about enforcement of the legislations we have?
Well, it has to be a combination of new legislation. As in development, it's very dynamic. So things change. So it has to be followed by new legislation. But then the enforcement for us is critical. And sometimes the elites know what is right, but they also become part of the problem by doing the wrong thing.
Talking about enforcement, I mean, what do you make of the Greater Accra Regional Minister's quest in making Accra work, in making Accra a great place by ensuring the enforcement of bylaws and the laws in the country?
Making Accra clean was part of President Akufo-Addo's campaign message. It's been about 4 years delayed.
Well, the minister in charge of sanitation and water resources says by end of Akufo-Addo's tenure, that should be achieved. But I'm asking you about...
Well, I'm coming to the Greater Accra Minister. I mean, I have seen his actions. This is not the first time we've seen a regional minister and the mayor of Accra going around, moving people from makeshift kiosks from one place to the other, clearing the place for road, relocating markets from one. This is not the first time. We've lived in this country for a while. In my thoughts, if he doesn't build a system around what he's doing, we will return to the same situation next year. You bet.
Why do you say that?
Because we've been there before. And he is not going to be the first. He's not the first Greater Accra.
Well, in the past, we've seen political parties, particularly their own political parties, fighting them. And I've given an example when Alfred Okuvandapoi tried it. Yabuatin Jan took him on.
Yeah.
But this time around, he has the support of all Ghanaians. His party is also backing him.
Well, I don't have a problem driving through Accra without any hindrances on the road. I can drive to Agbogboshi market area and go to Abosoka without any problem. I love it. But what I'm saying, if there is no system in place, if he relies on only human intimidation of those who are not abiding by the law, it will get to a time all those people will be shifted from one place to another. Well, just like this week, I was driving around the motorway, and I saw some people whipping people by the roadside. Their Ghana must go bags have been loaded, moving, and it was raining. I was saying, let's put some human face to this one also. As much as it's critical, you can't do humanitarian relief or development work without human face. So, great job. However, we've seen it before, and it may not last. This is just I'd say it as a temporary issue, unless he puts in place a system to maintain what he has done.
What kind of system are you looking forward to seeing being put in place?
For example, if you move people for a particular area, you must have had a plan on what you intend to use that place for. Even if it's an extension of the road, and after a year the roads have not been put in place, somebody will come back and put the kiosk there. Trust me.
But he's not supposed to put the kiosk there.
What I'm saying is that
so the authorities must ensure that
if there is a system, if there is a plan behind the actions, there will be no fallback. But if there is no plan, and I see there's no plan yet, because I've asked for it.
Well, Blushi is going to have a hospital.
Well, let us see.
Agenda 111.
Oh, you bet. I don't have a problem with that. If it comes, great. But let's see how long the gap is. If it comes early and the place is built up, the roads are fixed, the electricity is running, infrastructure is complete, and there's a network of roads, it's done. But if you are not ready, don't start it, because you have a reverse effect.
So once we're talking about crisis prevention, we're talking about and recovery, we're talking about our floods. You say we should begin to rethink the development planning.
Absolutely. Let me get back. The 40-year development plan that was prepared by Professor Kwesi Botwe, for example, I checked through it. They have a very comprehensive, long-term response to the flooding in this country. We should go check it out. I've seen it. Because when you asked me to have a conversation, I was thinking, where else can I believe in plans. On plans, ever since the NDC set up the COVID-19 technical team, we've been asking for the government's plan of response. You cannot have a task force. You cannot have the Minister of Health leading this task force and not a plan put in place. This is also a disaster response. Let's have a plan. It's a long-term plan.
And talking about the first-year development plan, what does it say about dealing with flooding?
Well, it deals about the structural nature of the country. We need to have data on this country as well. It's not only a response, but it's a planning process that has been embedded in the plan, which suggests that data on our land use system has to be put in place first. We cannot be doing these ad hoc knee-jerk responses to our flood and disaster issues, because we will continue to confront disasters in this country if we don't have a far-reaching plan for how we do it, involving all stakeholders, involving ministers. Not only NADMO that does, it's not the presidency, but it's a group of ministers that all have a role to play. Roads and highways, works and housing, interior, the defense, the presidency, Ministry of Finance. Everybody must be on the table. If they are not there, we'll see one part of the impact. Maybe a dam has been destroyed, a bridge has been destroyed by a flood. Then you see the highway minister, roads and highway minister alone going to address that. That's an error. You need to put a team of all the sectors on flooding to be there. And let's listen to what they have.
Well, my guest is Prosper Bani, and we're talking about flooding. Earlier we started talking about a few issues to do with his own stay in government. When we return after these short messages, we'll get his take on a few other issues in the country and what he makes with us. This is Upfront on the JoyNews channel. I am Winston Amwa. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Right, so welcome back, and thank you very much for staying with us. This is Upfront on the JoyNews channel, and today we're joined by Prosper Bani, former Chief of Staff, a former Minister of Interior, and we're having a conversation. I haven't worked with the UN, haven't been in charge of crisis prevention and recovery, haven't worked at the Bureau of Crisis Prevention and Recovery. He knows a lot when it comes to crisis management, and that's why we've been spending a lot of time talking about that. But let's get into one or two issues. I mean, issues within the country. Some of, you've been in government before, you were out of government, and so you'd have a better appreciation of what is happening. There's one thing that is bothering, that has gotten a lot of conversation, that has to do with presidential travels and what he should travel in. The presidential jet or a chartered flight. You've heard Dominic Nitiwu make the point, there's the defense minister, make the point that, well, if you really want the president to travel and move straight into meetings, no president can use a presidential flight, and so sometimes it's important to have a chartered flight. What's your take on that?
The president of a republic is a very important personality. And the responsibilities of a president outside this country is even more important if the president decides to go. The mode of traveling varies depending on where you're going, your timing, and how you want to get there. I think that if we have an effective and efficient management of the travel schedule of the president, there will be absolutely no need to go for a private commercial jet to transport our president from Ghana to anywhere else. Why am I saying this?
Tell me.
I'm saying this because I have experienced several situations where former presidents have to be somewhere on a schedule, and they use our presidential jet, granting that the jet cannot go beyond 6 or there about 9 hours maximum, I think. The planning is such that the president makes planned stopovers to refuel to get to his destination. You may be confronted with the capacity of the jet. That's where the presidential travel planners have to be more efficient. There's always an advance party for the president.
Yes.
There's always people who travel together with the president. And indeed, there are people who follow the president after he has left. If you plan properly, you can get the president to his or her destination in an efficient manner that there will be no need to go hire a private.
So are you saying we can do without hiring?
I think so, absolutely. We can do without hiring a jet, unless the jet is not usable, as may be the case. Either it is gone on servicing, or it's just been dictated as a technical fault. We are getting there. I don't think we should do that. I don't think so.
You think that's a waste of public resources?
Well, I think we should not do that. I think for efficient management of our resources, we should not go into that. And I think the president will be able to do his external business without adding additional resources by chartering cars. What do you call it? Flights to go to London or to go to Germany or to go to France. Our jet can do it. In any case, if we talk about numbers, we have a pool of diplomats in all our missions who can serve the president. From the ambassador, deputy ambassador, secretaries, all manner of people are in our missions. In France, in Washington, in London. So you don't need that crowd of political hangovers, or political hangouts to travel with the president.
Okay.
If they want, however you assess it, this business hang-ons, the political, they will be there anyway. But they do not have to be funded by the president or go on his. I've not sat in any of those luxurious aircrafts before, but from the pictures I've seen, very luxurious. Well, why not? If we have the resources, we could manage a replica of Air Force One, but where we are right now, we are being given vaccines free from the US. How can we be flying Air Force One type of aircraft?
Okay. What's your take on Agenda 111, 111 hospitals, 101 district hospitals to actually, improve upon our healthcare delivery system?
Healthcare delivery is key to any development effort. We need to be healthy. And if you have a healthy population, you have a healthy workforce, and therefore it impacts on the economy. So there can be no contention about expanding health delivery in Ghana. It has to be properly thought through. I traveled from the Volta region last night, and I had discussion with some people on health issues. MRI, for example, there's none from Uti region until 37. Dialysis machines. The only one, I think we have 2 or so in Ho, I'm not sure if they are still functioning. We don't have any in the south. I'm talking about the Uti region or that region.
Yeah.
So there is a serious gap that you can build. We have the Huhwe Hospital, we have the Margaret Bagua Hospital, we have the teaching hospital in Ho, without any equipment. So why don't we prioritize what we really need in the health sector?
And what do you think we really need in the health sector?
I think we should send health to the people, decentralized health management and service to the people, and also provide the technical expertise and equipment for them to use. In this country, as we speak, I understand, I don't know the numbers, but there are hundreds of doctors who are sitting at home, well-qualified doctors sitting at home. The Medical and Dental Council have not gone through the process. Why don't we just do this rather than building another big hospital? Not even one, just one. Why shouldn't we just take care of the doctors?
You want us to provide equipment, provide personnel, and
decentralize the health service to our people. In that way, the infrastructure will automatically come as prioritized, not as a political message that will do 1-1-1. I would like to see the plan that went, or the thinking and the plan that has been put in place for the agenda 1-1-1.
So for you, building 111 hospitals
now is not the priority.
Okay.
What we need now is to equip the existing hospitals that we have now, complete those that have not been completed, place the medical personnel in those hospitals and manage them efficiently, and open up the space for more infrastructure work in terms of building hospitals. Do we need hospitals to be built? Yes, we do. Do we need 111 hospitals to be built in the next 4 years, like right now, when our people are dying from mere sicknesses or illnesses that could be addressed if we have modern equipment at their doorsteps? We can't do that. We can't continue to treat our people like that. I don't have a problem with building hospital infrastructure. I don't. And I don't think a lot of people do have problem. But let's have the grandmother, my auntie, when they get sick and they go to the nearest hospital, they have the lab, they have the equipment to detect what is wrong with them, and they have the prescription to cure them. That's all we need right now.
Okay. I mean, let me get your take on a few things, because, and also COVID-19, because we know of the parliamentary committee, ad hoc committee, to investigate the circumstances around the procurement of Sputnik V vaccines. I haven't heard of your technical team. I mean, what's your position on that particular whole situation? And Parliament had raised concerns about even the procurement. I mean, what do you make of the procurement processes of the Bosch Sputnik deal?
I think a lot have gone into that conversation. That anything I would say would just be a repetition. And whatever our leadership in Parliament has said, trust me, the voice and thinking of the technical team has gone into those things. So, I mean, we can't be working in competition with each other. We have a system, and this is a system on issues that we have to address with government, we have to address through Parliament. We have a system of doing that. We don't repeat ourselves. So whatever our leadership in Parliament is saying today on those procurement processes, the technical team is in full support of those conversations. And we stand by those positions of the minority in Parliament.
Now, talking about the minority in Parliament, I'm sure you've been following proceedings in Parliament, and you may have seen there are instances where your party the grassroots seem to be taking the minority on. They feel they are not doing what is expected of them, particularly when they were vetting ministers. Were you disappointed in how the minority conducted themselves during the vetting?
Well, I think that whatever happened at that time is part of the internal democratic process of our party. Leadership is in full control of those processes. There's been a lot of engagement with the grassroots to appreciate the work of the minority caucus in Parliament. And I think that what the party needs now is full support of our numbers in Parliament to make sure that the minority caucus is strong and be able to live up to the expectations of Ghanaians, and not to demoralize them by voices that have not been informed fully of situations on the ground. And I think that the leadership of the party has done a great job. I know there's been a lot of conversation between the minority leadership, the party leadership, and some elements of the grassroots. And right now, as we speak, they continue to do a good job in the House right now.
Prior to the good job by the leadership, were you at any point, did you at any point feel that certain things could have been done differently by the MPs?
Don't forget that at that moment, it was just after the elections. The party was in court. We were negotiating so many things. We had a new speaker, which also turned a lot of tables in the House. And during that moment, I can only give credit to the minority caucus for holding the fort and pushing to where we are today. I don't think that there's any way anyone can not appreciate what they did. Even if you have issues, in any action, there's always the...
Have you had any issues yourself?
No, I don't have any issues at all. Because I understand the processes. And maybe my responsibility to explain more to people who do not appreciate it. I don't have any issues with the way the minority caucus is trying to manage affairs in the House versus the huge expectations of the NDC on them, given the equal numbers in the House.
Do you think you haven't managed the grassroots expectation well? Is that the cause of the problem, the management of the expectation?
Look, the issue is that we just lost an election. People were frustrated. People wanted to fight on. And even if the understanding of majority of the members of the NDC, that the NDC won the election. So... Is
that your understanding too?
Well, all the figures are not matching. I followed all the results. And because it's now been... The case has gone to the Supreme Court, and if I'm talking about this, I'll see if I'm speaking against the judgment. We all observers of what went through the court. We all observed the results the way they were announced. And as of today, we don't have the consistency of numbers to show that one person won the elections absolutely in a process within the Constitution.
Well, you couldn't prove that in court.
Well, the Supreme Court has spoken, so let's leave it at that. We will leave that battle to another time. Yeah.
Another time? Your party says they won't go back to the courts again.
Well, that's why I say another time. That's another election cycle. There's a whole battle at that time.
There's a whole battle at that time?
Of course, every election is a battle.
You're prepared for the 2024 elections?
Absolutely.
It's only 2021.
Yeah, but this is where, if you are not confident now, you can't win the 2024 election. Then this is very confident.
You don't have a flag bearer, so how can you be confident?
Oh, we will have one. We will have a good one as well.
Oh, you know who will be?
No, it's going to go through the democratic process. We expect that we'll have a good one that will contest with anybody who is picked from the NPP, and we will win.
You seem to know who that person would be.
Right now, do I have any hopes? Of course, yes. But every other person have hopes. But then it's whether you subject those hopes and aspirations to the democratic process to come out with your leader. It's politics. So we need to come out with a leader that will lead us to the 2024.
And you have a hope of a specific leader, a particular leader?
Like
somebody that you're looking forward to from your party that you know is going to lead you.
What I'm saying is that...
No, what I'm asking is, when it comes to your party, do you know that person that all things being equal,
well,
you say?
if you ask me, I'll be very frank with you. If you ask me, John Mahama is our best candidate right now. Whether we will contest the view or not. But that is open for others to come up to contest him at any primaries to also become a candidate. But for me, as his former chief of staff, former minister for interior, I have no doubt that if John Mahama decides to contest, he will be our best candidate. And I don't think that his records will speak for himself. No matter, it's to be a different conversation if you want to go into Mahama's record. I can tell you he's done so well in education, in health, on roads and health, education, roads. We can't challenge that with John Mahama. So for me, I'm convinced that, well, the MPPs in government, right, it's a temporary break. The NDC will come back, and with the vision that he has, we'll be able to go. But like I said earlier, we need to subject this to the democratic process of the NDC party. I'm just one person speaking. So,
but one person who is close to John Mahama, maybe you know something a lot of us do not know.
No, well, that is all I have spilled out there right now. That this is my personal opinion. If the party subjects me to any opinion, this is what I will say. Because right now, I have not seen anybody or heard about anybody who wants to. And I'm saying that if President John Mahama plans to stand for the NDC ticket, he will be the best candidate.
How did you feel when you were relieved of your position as chief of staff? I didn't
feel any... I had performed a good job to my expectation. And therefore, and I do not have a monopoly on the job. And that will not be the first time that I will be moving from a high profile job to another, or from a high profile job to some other responsibility. So I understood that change.
Did the president speak to you?
Absolutely. That's how it works. He spoke to me. He spoke to me when he was appointing me. He spoke to me when he asked me to step aside. And that is how we have to manage.
What did he tell you was the reason why he wanted you to step aside?
Oh, that one I think is very, very confidential. I think keep it to myself. Maybe you'll come to read it somewhere in some book, but...
Oh, you're writing a book?
I can't... I want to train. I want to teach. I want to build capacity. I want to mentor. I can only do that if I keep my notes.
So you're writing a book on your...
I'm keeping my notes.
In a book that we can read later on?
I think so.
And you came back in government as Minister of Interior. There are those who felt that was like a demotion from your earlier position.
Well, you know, when you are serving a country, you are serving society, it is not the position, it is what you can offer. Once you begin to rank yourself, then you cannot give out your best anywhere. That's why we all must understand that if you feel comfortable leading a group of people to deliver on anything that will help other people, why not? You don't have to be chief of staff to do that. You understand what I'm talking about? Yeah, you don't have to be a chief of staff. So that demotion thing is a mental deficit in people's mind.
Prosper Bani, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Folks, that'll be all from us. Today on Upfront on the JoyNews channel, we're recording in the house of former Chief of Staff, former Interior Minister Prosper Bani. A very sunny day today, but thank you very much for being part of us. Do have a lovely evening. Up next is JoyNews Prime. Thank you for staying with us.